in karate when I'm first meeting somebody and we're talking about karate or other traditional martial arts, that is that like hikite, that withdrawing hand,
Hmm.
and it's like, oh, well, that's just to add power, it's like, wait.
Perfect.
We've had talks about this in the past on the gentrification of BJJ. I could see it taking a familiar route that karate did back in the mid 80s until now, where there's one really impactful moment that made everybody look at karate, and that was obviously the Karate Kid. And then, and then,
Yep.
and then everybody starts training karate, and it has to become a little more popularized. Once something becomes more popularized, you have to water it down a little bit so it's accessible to everyone. And I feel like we're maybe in the super early stages of seeing sport jiu-jitsu, stuff like that, take a turn where it's going to be more accessible to the average person.
What it comes down to in a big portion is appealing to the lowest common denominator of the student base that you have.
Sure.
So, in other words, I mean, if you think about no martial art, in my opinion, this is not my opinion, this is pretty close to fact. It's no martial art was really meant to be taught to a huge group of people.
Sure.
It was meant to be one-on-one or one on just a close few people with the instructor like ever present, hands-on, adjusting and making sure that all the detailed like information was passed. So then,
Right.
the more popular something becomes, like you're talking about, then you get larger groups that you're teaching it to and spreading it to. And then how do you do that most effectively? Well, you're going to have a wide array of people in that group. So you're
Right,
going to have
yeah.
the athletes, you're going to have the very intuitive people, you're going to have people that learn all different ways, and you're going to have the guy that can't make it from the front door to the mat without like hurting himself because he has no
Of
coordination.
course, right.
So it's you can't teach just to that guy,
Sure.
but you do have to water it down enough to make some of it accessible to
Right.
him. And meanwhile, you also have to make it accessible. And this is if you're taking a really detailed approach. Now, if you take maybe a lazier approach, and I think that's often the times that the most damage is done, the most corruption to it is done, is whenever it's just a lazy approach. Like, look, anybody can do this, so we're just going to do this. Okay,
Sure.
just put your hands here like this. Throw
Mhm.
a hand out there. Now you're doing karate. Great.
Right,
Fantastic.
yeah.
Stand in
Exactly.
this horse stance. Why is it called a horse stance? I don't know. Why are you
Yeah,
putting your
right.
hand here when you're punching out here?
Right.
And that's kind of my litmus test a lot of the time whenever like I'm talking to somebody who has a long history in karate when I'm first meeting somebody and we're talking about karate or other traditional martial arts or something, is that like hikite, that withdrawing hand,
Mhm.
and it's like, oh, well, that's just to add power, it's like, wait,
Yeah.
okay, and I mean,
you can
that's a whole
turn
other
your body
rabbit
in
hole
so many
to
other
go
ways.
down.
No, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm with you on that.
so I mean, but it's just a thing. I mean, you can tell when somebody is just regurgitating lazy information that they got
Mhm.
from their teacher,
Right.
and their teacher really did them a disservice. And and as a good student, quote unquote, they never really questioned a lot of it, and so they just kind of carried
Right.
on this tradition. So
Yeah.
it's better, and that's why it's going to be a little bit slower of a process, I think, with like the watering down of jiu-jitsu, because it is
Mhm.
more hands-on. There is definitely
Definitely.
ways to do it. I definitely see ways to water something down in
Mhm.
jiu-jitsu and convince people they're doing something the right and accurate way,
Right.
and still mess up the technique enough,
Mhm.
but if you're doing it with any kind of honesty at all, any kind of like physical and intellectual honesty at all, then you're going to see
Sure.
that the technique's not going to work against resistance, because there's
Yeah.
plenty of ways to test that out. So
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't call it a split by any means, but it feels like there's like a two-sided argument of jujitsu should be more self-defense based, or there's like the two different sides.
both are fun. I mean, the
Right.
sportive
Yeah,
aspect of it
absolutely.
can have a lot of fun to it, but yeah, the competition training aspect is a lot, is quite a bit different, but I mean, both of them have, their purposes and serve their purposes. I think that I think saying, if I get together in my free time and train with some of my buddies, we're more likely gonna like go down a rabbit hole, we're probably not going to sit there and do, like gun disarms over and over and over again for 2 hours.
Sure, right.
If we're just getting together to train, we are probably going to check out the latest like leg locks or something. We're probably going to do something very sporty and some of that butt scooting stuff that people like to make fun of. So, but that's really fun. It's the fun part of it, and the sport aspect of it, especially the training, the sport aspect of it is a lot of fun sometimes.
Yeah, right. And I mean, I kick bottles, so like I'm right there with you. There's some stuff that's just way more fun to do, and while bottle kicking doesn't really like have a specific application like butt scooting does, like I guess like kicking targets, stuff like that. But the idea is that if you like go so strict on either it being traditional or sport, like you lose some of the enjoyment that you would find in the recreation of just like trying stuff out, not having any dire consequences right then and there, and more so gearing it towards enjoying yourself.
Oh, absolutely. I think that if fun isn't a big piece of the pie chart of why you're training, then you probably haven't been training very long. To me, whenever it's unless you're just training to be a world champion. But I mean, if you're, and which I'm sure that can get grueling, but the payoff is what makes it all rewarding.
Right. The payoff is the goal. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, if you are just somebody who's training for a lifestyle, for a lifelong journey, then fun has to be a pretty big slice of that pie chart, because otherwise it's not going to keep you going. It's not going to keep you motivated and energetic to train. And yeah, I think that's a really important thing. I tell people never discount fun when you're writing up the equation. The people who like to jump into especially like toxic like threads of comments a lot of the time, and it's like talking about how this person isn't training hardcore enough or that person's not training hardcore enough. I don't know. That's usually a lot more revealing about that person than it is the whoever they're talking about.
Yeah, the best way I can always explain it is like there's 3 avenues of training martial arts. There's like competitive, where you want to get into sport. There's recreational, where you're just like, you want something to do that's going to keep you healthy. And then there's like, I want to be able to fight somebody if somebody asks me for my lunch money. And there's obviously like times where it falls in between each, like it mixes with the two. But if you could describe it, your journey as leaning towards one of the 3, 2 of the 3, all encompassing, what would you say your style is?
I'd say it varies. I mean, I think that people, when I talk to people who I don't really know personally, and I'm just like starting a conversation with them, and they know who I am, and they've seen some of my stuff or whatever, then they generally are like, well, you're more of a self-defense guy, so yada, yada, yada. And I get why. I understand why, because on the public facing front, like with instructionals and things that I've put out, there's probably a lot more of the self-defense stuff, and the self-defense jiu-jitsu stands out because it's not as like ubiquitous anymore. I mean, it's more than anything. If you look up jiu-jitsu, anything online, you're going to come up with like the latest, sportive thing that's going to help you out in competition, and which is all really great, or MMA stuff, so the self-defense side of things is kind of, it's just not as spoken about as much any longer.
And what's really cool about styles is I think way too many people talk about which style is best, when in all actuality, if you walk into any gym, like they're never teaching just one style.
No, it's really rare to see these days. I mean, used to, it was a lot more common to see that, but and there definitely are places where this is strictly this kind of academy. But I mean, I think even just as a business model, that's not a good approach any longer. You have to have, other instructors for other styles, and you probably have to have somebody or some way to assuage the people who want to go into more of the sportive or more of the competition side, and then more of the recreational or self-defense side. And, so that really forces you, if you, are just strictly a one style kind of academy, to really kind of branch out and to be a little bit more open.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for watching. First off, if you haven't yet, make sure you go give Mr. Knight a follow. He puts out tons of cool content, and odds are you probably already follow him. But I feel like this is a really cool cap to talk about the different talks about BJJ and different types of jiu-jitsu that we've had in the past. So it was awesome having him on here, clearing some stuff up, making me feel wrong about things. That's always fun. We'll have another talk about kata and belt ranking system and the differences between karate and jiu-jitsu, so that should be fun. Make sure you stay tuned. Until next time, bye!
keep everybody the same standards when everybody's body is a little bit different, talent's different, the ability to learn is different.
Well, and that's the thing, especially because coming from such, there's never been, just generally speaking, I don't think there's ever been a martial art as perform